Hi, everyone. My name is Allie. I'm so excited that you're all here in our space. We love it too. We've been here since January in this office specifically, and we're still kind of enamored with it every day. We like get a little, the heart eye emojis. That's us every day when we walk into the office. So you're not alone. I am the lead customer success engineer at Textio, and that means I lead a team of data storytellers working to show the impact of language. I'll get to more on what that means in just a minute, but fun fact about me before we get started, my background is in linguistics, so Textio is really a perfect fit for me. When I was studying linguistics, I, over my past studies, have learned 6 different languages. Fluency is a completely different question. My best language would be Mandarin Chinese. I spent 5 months living in Beijing, China. So it goes from Mandarin Chinese to I'm just starting to learn Bulgarian, and that's not going so well because I'm doing that on the side. And there's not a lot of time for that because Textio is so exciting. So being a linguist, I'm fascinated by words, especially my native tongue, actually, English. I love thinking about how the words that we use every day perform. So synergy. Who likes the word synergy? Anyone at all? You use it in everything you write. Who hates the word synergy? Lots of people hate the word synergy. So synergy is kind of like the clip art of words. It's like the most generic, terrible thing you've maybe ever heard. But being a linguist and working at Textio has really taught me that with all the linguistic data that Textio has, a lot of times data about words defy our expectations. So for example, whoever would have thought that sometimes using synergy can be a good thing? So it turns out that depending on where you use the word synergy, if you're using synergy in your hiring language, if you use synergy in your hiring language in any of the cities on the left-hand side, so for example, if you use the word synergy in hiring language in London, in a job post, that job listing will fill more quickly. If you use the word synergy in a job post in Philadelphia, on the other hand, that job listing will fill more slowly. So today we'll talk more about how it's possible to measure how words like this actually perform. But first, what would you say makes someone a good writer? Actually, I want to know. Let's take we have a lot of recruiters here, so let's take a specific example. What makes a good recruiting mail? Who here thinks they're the best person ever at writing recruiting mails? Oh, come on, guys. What would you say makes a good recruiting mail? Any examples? Any thoughts? Yeah.
Knowing your audience.
Cool. Knowing your audience.
To the point.
To the point. Cool. Yep. Another one in the back.
Reflects the voice of the company as well.
Voice of the company.
It feels personal. It doesn't feel like spam.
Personal. Cool. two votes for that. Yeah.
Authentic and relevant.
Great. These are all excellent ideas. But I think probably the most important thing to note is that they're all so different. And that's not really a surprise at all, because with writing today, how we talk about writing, everything is subjective. What makes a good writer, what makes a bad writer. As we know it today, writing is subjective. We don't know. So for example, I used to work in public relations. I would write a lot of press releases. From the time that I wrote my first draft of a press release, sent it to my manager, she sent it to her manager, we sent it to the client for review, the client sent it to their boss for review. There were 15 versions between the one that I started on and the one that actually ended up going to journalists. And every time I saw a new version, I would be like, it just seems so arbitrary. Why did you change those words? The truth is that without data, when you're thinking about language, you're just guessing. So enter Textio. For the first time ever, Textio is putting data behind the words that you write. That means Textio is what we call an augmented writing platform. It means giving you the data on how every word you use is going to impact your audience. If you're writing a recruiting mail and you use one word over another, how does that increase the chance that you'll get a response? If you're writing a job description, you use one word over another or change the formatting, how does that change the likelihood that someone's going to apply? But by using data, you can take out the guesswork. So Textio consistently shows us that the best job posts do 3 things. This is the job seeker's journey as they read a role. It's pretty similar to if you're going to go to a library or a bookstore and buy a book. The cover catches your attention, you turn it over, you read the back, you get engaged in the story, you get immersed, and then ultimately something convinces you to buy it. Or you could go home and just download it on your Kindle, because that's the year 2018. So when it comes to job descriptions, Textio uncovers patterns at each of these stages. And Textio does that by analyzing a database of 370 million jobs, to which 10 million get added every month. So by the end of this presentation, you'll know how to use that real linguistic data to actually attract qualified, diverse candidates and fill your roles more quickly. So the first thing a good job does is attract good candidates. There's a lot of noise in the job market. On average, a job seeker takes only 6 seconds to read your listing before they decide whether to apply or walk away. Another unfortunate stat is that about 1/3 of the candidates that read your job description will ultimately do the latter. They'll walk away. But imagine a world where you already knew how people were going to react before you publish your language out into the world. Unfortunately, that's not how things work today with job posts. Today, many companies take what I call a mad scientist approach to writing job listings. Just to give you an example from what I've heard many of my customers do, they go through this hunt that involves either looking at their own company's careers page or digging in the depths of their download folder or their desktop to find like a job that they've used before. They update the rec. I'm here like giggles. That means that this is probably accurate. They update the recs a little. They send it to another person that needs to get approval, put approval on that role. That person adds what they think that ideal candidate should look like. And then it goes to finance for approval and things change, right? But what doesn't happen is consideration into how does that affect the way that the job actually performs? You end up with this Franken listing. It's a monster. And Textio's data shows that long listings statistically cause a big drop-off in the number of applicants. There's actually a sweet spot right now for length that's between 300 and 700 words. And you might say that doesn't sound like much of a sweet spot. That's like a really large sweet spot. You'd be surprised how many jobs are either very far above or very far below that threshold. Keep in mind also that this is what the data shows is performing well right now. So only with a stream of current data can you conclusively say how applicants are going to respond to a listing in today's market. Yeah?
There's a section that's darker green. Is that the even more optimal?
That is indeed the even more optimal range. In fact, though, Textio found recently that shorter jobs fill even faster than longer jobs. Not surprising. So let's say you manage to keep all the extra cooks out of the kitchen. It's still possible to bore a job seeker to sleep. So your job is like an advertisement. It's just directed at a smaller market, but it's an advertisement for your company. It's also an advertisement for the role. You have 6 seconds to literally sell someone on that job. So how can you use the fewest words possible to sound the most interesting? The best job posts today have 13 words per sentence. That's actually shorter than the average sentence length for standard written English, what you'd see in books or newspapers. And it's interesting that, similar to the total length of your job, sentence length is trending towards shorter. So I think there's scientists that say now, right, that like humans have a shorter attention span than goldfish, probably because of our cell phones. Each unnecessary word, basically, is just another reason for someone to stop reading and move on. Yeah?
Do you find that that's the same across all levels of jobs? Like if you're hiring an executive level versus hiring a more entry-level job?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked. There are differences to how jobs perform by job type, and we'll get to that later. Actually, one of the best ways to show how different language impacts different job types is there are so many different rabbit holes I could go down with this, but I can also just show you Textio at the end, and I have some examples ready. I'll touch back on that again. So, bullets. We're talking about first impressions, right? We're attracting a good candidate. And one of the biggest factors of a person's first impression of a job is how much of your job is in bullets. So there's tons of ways to slice and dice the data on how bullets affect your applicant pool. Similar to what I shared before, though, I think the best and most interesting findings are sometimes the most surprising. And one of those interesting things to me is that Textio found that bullets in jobs actually affect the gender balance of your talent pool. So when 50% or more of your job description is in bullets, that means over half is in bullets, right? It's like a laundry list of things. That listing attracts more men on average. When your job is 25% or less bulleted content, so more paragraph form, less bullets, more women are likely to apply. So on a whole, Textio's predictive engine currently shows that the best listings contain about 1/3 bulleted content. That's how you can strike both a balance, right, of attracting all of the people that you would want to attract to the role, the widest range of people to your job, find the best person, and fill it quickly. The second thing that Textio's data shows is that the best job listings engage candidates by presenting the role and your company in a compelling way. And that matches what some of you hypothesized when you were talking about recruiting mail too. It's really important to talk about your company in a way that resonates with the candidate. So we found that in the job description data. Now, it's actually a valuable lesson for job seekers. And if you think of it from a job seeker perspective, it makes a lot of sense. When you're looking for a job, reading the job is the first and most important thing that tells you what a company will be like to work for. Many people spend 40 or more hours a week at their job. So if someone can't picture themselves doing something meaningful or, heaven forbid, enjoyable when they read the job description, why would they even bother applying? And as a hiring manager or recruiter or managing teams that are writing any types of jobs, it's your responsibility to make sure that the mental picture someone conjures in their head when they read that job description is a good one. And so these are some of the questions that run through a candidate's head when they're looking for a job, when they're looking to make the jump. Textio consistently finds that the most successful jobs answer these questions by directly addressing candidates. So in fact, listings that use formal or indirect phrases, like the ideal candidate, will fill more slowly. But it's more than just directly addressing the candidate. Textio's data also shows that the ratio of you to we statements is critical. So it's about a 1-to-1 balance. So you want to try to strike a balance between telling you in this case the job seeker, what you will be doing in the role, and also saying with we language how that person will fit into our mission, our vision, our values, and our goals. Textio's data also shows a strong correlation between listing engagement and a company's stated commitment to fair hiring practices. And the correlation is so strong that job posts with an equal opportunity statement fill 10% faster than jobs without an equal opportunity statement. And this isn't a fluke. Textio collects data from all over the world, not just the US, where equal opportunity language has legal implications. And across the global data, there's an increasingly clear trend that candidates really care about an employer's commitment to transparent and fair hiring practices. And just stating that your company is a equal opportunity, I'm using like air quotes, equal opportunity or affirmative action employer isn't enough, because Textio found that job listings that do that bare minimum, just check the box with like, my favorite is when it's at the bottom, like the footer of your site, like below all the other extra links, right? Yep, in like gray text, yeah. Companies that use that bare minimum of language saw even worse hiring results than companies that had no equal opportunity statement at all.
Whoa.
And it's actually possible, on that same note, to optimize the language in your equal opportunity statements. So anywhere that there's a green highlight on this slide is a word or a phrase that indicates a positive effect on hiring metrics, like faster time to fill. The orange highlighted words are negative effects. So you can, back to what we were saying before, use data to see what language will resonate best on today's hiring market. And that brings me to convincing the candidate to apply. The words you use have measurable impact. Once you've attracted and engaged with the candidates, it's time to use the words that will ultimately convince them, right? To convince them, you want to use the words that are performing best in today's market. An example, does anyone here have kids? A few people. How many of your kids have phones? A few people. If you were to take your kid's phone and read their text messages, what percent of those messages do you think you'd understand? Any guesses? 0, 100. Guys, we got some 50s, 40s. I mean, another example, I have a sister who's a freshman in college, and Snapchatting with her makes me feel like she's speaking a different language. And that's just one way that language changes over time. The way we communicate changes over time, and that shows up in job posts too. So from the millions of jobs that Textio analyzes and gains month over month, adds to the database, there are certain groups of words that Textio finds work especially well, or don't work especially well. So I'm going to tell you a few key areas to focus so that you can make sure the words you're using right now are going to attract the best people to your roles. So, guessing game. 3 of these words cause listings to fill more slowly. Which ones do you think they are?
Team player, work perfectionist.
Team player, work ethic, perfectionist. That's more than 3. You're already over it. You used up your guesses. So, surprise. The highlighted words highlighted in orange cause jobs to fill more slowly. Words in green cause jobs to fill more quickly, right? You might think that technology-driven is a good thing. It sounds great. I want to be technology-driven, but I'll share an example in a second which kind of explains maybe why it's not. But we're not in the business of guessing at Textio. We just show the data, right? The data is the truth, not what we think. So any guesses why every day is in a box? It's a trick question. It doesn't have any impact on time to fill. When you use every day, it doesn't cause a job to fill more quickly or more slowly. But if you add a single word, pun definitely intended, if you add every single day, and that's the word you use, every single day causes jobs to fill more quickly. So just another example, it's for fun, of showing how without data, right, you as a human could not conceive of picking the patterns across so many jobs to know what will actually work. Corporate cliches. Avoid them like the plague. I think it's something that we'd all we're laughing, we agree about it, but it's a lot harder in practice. My favorite on this list, and favorite I say is if we're frenemies, the word stakeholders. Stakeholders is it shows up everywhere. So as Textio found, analyzing millions of documents every month, and Textio found that certain words and phrases have been so far embedded in corporate jargon that they basically have lost all meaning. So remember what we said before, right, about applicants only having 6 seconds to lose interest, and also wanting to know what they're going to be doing. Address them directly. Tell them, without ambiguity, what they can expect. They're making a huge, major life change. So cut out all the meaningless stuff. These words are all associated with slower time to fill. Things and the way that you can change that is getting more specific. If you're driving results, what kind of results? Stakeholder, right? What does that mean? If they're going to be working with stakeholders, who are their stakeholders? Is it development teams? Is it the finance teams? Is it the executive team? Is it customers, right? Get as specific as possible. The more specific you are, the the less likely that that word will fill your job slowly. And I mentioned before, right, that technology-driven, that's kind of an example of a corporate cliche, right? Like, what does technology-driven even mean?
Everything's technology-driven.
Everything's technology-driven, right? So it sounds good until you realize that they're hearing it across every job that they're looking at. Doesn't make you sound so special anymore. Second type of language I'll call out, I think this one's really interesting, is growth versus fixed mindset language. So how many people have heard of growth mindset language? Lots of you, yay. For those of you who don't know, growth mindset language is abilities or growth. Let's talk about growth mindset. If you have a growth mindset, you think that abilities and talents are things that can be developed over time. If you have a fixed mindset or think that, those things are fixed, it means that whatever you're born with, that's done. You're not going to change, you're not going to improve. The presence of growth mindset language in jobs has a clear effect on time to fill. Jobs with a lot of growth mindset language fill 1.5 times faster. Recently, I've been analyzing a lot of customer data and looking even at just specific companies and words on how they perform. One word that's showing up across a lot of them is degree required or degree preferred, right? Candidates want to know that regardless of their experience level, they can learn. They want to be in a role where they can grow into it, not that they're being judged necessarily on, they want to be judged on their strengths, not their past experiences. Another interesting stat is that jobs where women are hired are twice as likely to contain growth mindset words. So it impacts the balance of the gender demographics of who applies to your job as well. So if any of this seems abstract or hard to remember, that's okay. Because remember that humans are not computers. It would actually be pretty weird if you could analyze millions of jobs constantly and on a recurring basis and surface patterns over time and also remember them. That's a lot to put on one human brain. So this is just kind of a taste of the patterns that Textio surfaces when it comes to language. And the good news is that if you're curious, there's a 2-week free trial. If you're writing a job right now, you can go ahead and check it out. So even more examples there as you write. I think we have a lot of extra time. So do you guys want to see some examples?
Yes.
Awesome. Another place that's really great, if any of this was interesting to you, I meant to mention it actually when we went over the growth versus fixed mindset language section. Textio.ai is our company blog, and that's where we surface so many of these findings and go into even more depth. So if you're a data nerd like me, you could probably geek out on there for hours. Okay, to just show you how Textio works for job descriptions, we'll be editing a Amazon Prime Video principal product manager job today. Quite the mouthful. First thing I'm going to do before I start writing, coming back to your question on job type. Yes, it matters. So Textio guesses for me that based on the language in my job, it looks like a product management role, and I can say yes, it is. But I can see that there's other options here as well. Executive is, in fact, a category. Anything that's surfaced in this list is somewhere that Textio found there's a statistically significant difference in how language performs. And if I'm remembering correctly, lead a team. You'll see that that suggestion is specific to product management roles. So right now I'm saying you will lead a team, but actually oversee a team will increase my odds. I'm going to fill this role even faster. And I see my Textio score is recalculating and jumps up a few points. And that feedback is specific to product management. Similar to job type, right, and the slide I showed way back at the beginning about synergy is how location impacts the way that your job performs. So this one is for Seattle, Washington, and Textio is recalculating my score. Didn't change anything. That means it wasn't a huge shift. This green box might look familiar, right? A green box is a word or a phrase that isn't having a negative impact on your Textio score, but it's not having a positive impact either. So interested in doesn't perform as well as passionate about. And every time I take one of Textio's suggestions, like adding a green word or removing, thank you very much, removing this formal language, right? And we can also see, right, there's things like you will. And then instead of A, let's add some we language. But let's not say high performing team because, hey, that doesn't perform as well with strong candidates in Washington. I told Textio that I'm writing a job in Seattle, and it's surfacing the language that will work specifically for the audience that I'm trying to reach. Pleasure having you here, guys. Thank you for all your questions. It was so nice to meet you. Thanks.